She thought it was just another flight, serving drinks, checking seatbelts, calming restless passengers. But when a frail millionaire pressed the call button, his voice trembling with a final request, everything changed at 30,000 feet. What the flight attendant did next would turn the entire cabin silent. Stay with me until the end, because this story will leave you in awe. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and comment below where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Maya Rodriguez had been a flight attendant for 3 years. At 26, she carried herself with quiet confidence, her dark hair always perfectly styled, her uniform crisp and professional. She worked for Continental Airways, flying the Los Angeles to New York route twice a week. The job wasn't glamorous like people imagined. Most days meant dealing with demanding passengers, crying babies, and the occasional drunk businessman who thought his first-class ticket gave him special privileges. But Maya loved what she did. She genuinely cared about making people comfortable during their journey. She remembered regular passengers by name, always had extra blankets ready for elderly travelers, and could calm the most nervous flyers with just a warm smile and reassuring words. Her colleagues respected her, passengers requested her sections, and supervisors praised her professionalism. That Tuesday morning in October started like any other. Maya arrived at LAX 2 hours before departure, went through her usual pre-flight routine, checked the passenger manifest, and prepared the cabin. Flight 447 to JFK was booked solid. 180 passengers, including a mix of business travelers, families, and tourists heading to New York. As passengers boarded, Maya noticed him immediately. Seat 2A, first class. He was probably in his early 70s, wearing an expensive navy suit that hung loose on his thin frame. His silver hair was neatly combed, but his skin had that pale, translucent quality that spoke of serious illness. He moved slowly, deliberately, using a walking cane with an ornate silver handle. What struck Maya most were his eyes. They held a sadness so deep, it seemed to pull at something in her chest. He settled into his seat with visible effort, declining her offer to help with his carry-on bag. When she brought him a glass of water, he thanked her with a voice that was cultured, refined, but barely above a whisper. The man's name, according to the passenger list, was Harrison Blackwell. Maya didn't recognize the name, but something about him suggested wealth and importance. His watch was clearly expensive, his shoes were Italian leather, and he carried himself with the bearing of someone accustomed to respect. As the plane taxied for takeoff, Maya went through her safety demonstration, but she found her eyes drifting back to Mr. Blackwell. He sat perfectly still, hands folded in his lap, staring out the window with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not fear of flying, not boredom, but something deeper, something final. Once they reached cruising altitude, Maya began her beverage service. The first-class cabin was relatively quiet, most passengers either working on laptops or settling in for the cross-country flight. When she reached Mr. Blackwell's seat, he was writing in a leather-bound journal with a fountain pen. "Can I offer you something to drink, Mr. Blackwell?" she asked softly. He looked up, and for a moment, she saw something flicker in his eyes. Recognition? Gratitude? "Just water, please, and thank you for remembering my name." His voice was so gentle, so genuinely appreciative, that Maya found herself lingering. "Of course. Is there anything else I can do for you? Extra pillows? A blanket?" He shook his head, but his eyes held hers for a moment longer than necessary. "You're very kind. What's your name?" "Maya Rodriguez." "Maya." He repeated it carefully, as if memorizing it. "That's a beautiful name. It means illusion in Sanskrit, but also love and compassion in other cultures." Maya was surprised by his knowledge, touched by his interest. "You know a lot about names." "I know a lot about many things. Too many things, perhaps." His smile was sad but genuine. "Thank you for the water, Maya." As she moved on to other passengers, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that their brief conversation held more weight than it should have. There was something about Harrison Blackwell that pulled at her heart, something beyond his obvious illness and loneliness. 2 hours into the flight, while Maya was serving lunch, the call button above Seat 2A chimed softly. She finished distributing meals to the row she was working on and made her way forward. Mr. Blackwell was sitting very straight, his hands trembling slightly as they gripped the armrests. "Miss Blackwell, are you all right?" He looked up at her, and she could see pain flickering across his features. Not just physical pain, though that was clearly present, but emotional pain so raw it took her breath away. "Maya," he said, his voice barely audible above the engine noise, "I need to ask you something. Something important." She knelt beside his seat, bringing herself to his eye level. The other first-class passengers were occupied with their meals or entertainment systems. "What is it? Are you feeling ill? Should I call the captain?" "No, please. Nothing like that." He reached into his jacket pocket with shaking hands and pulled out an envelope. The paper was heavy, expensive, with his name embossed in gold lettering. "I need you to understand something. This flight, meeting you, it's not a coincidence." Maya frowned, confused. "I don't understand." "I'm dying, Maya. The doctors gave me 2 weeks, maybe 3. This is my last trip home." His voice cracked slightly on the word home. "I've spent my entire life building an empire, accumulating wealth, achieving what the world calls success. But I have no family left, no children, no one who will remember me for anything other than the money I made." Maya's heart clenched. She glanced around quickly, making sure they weren't drawing attention, then focused back on him. "Mr. Blackwell, I'm so sorry." "Harrison. Please call me Harrison." He held the envelope toward her with both hands. "I have a request, a final wish, if you will. And I know this sounds insane, asking a stranger, someone I met just hours ago, but there's something about you, Maya, something that tells me you're exactly the person I've been looking for." Maya stared at the envelope, her mind racing. This was definitely not covered in flight attendant training. "Harrison, what are you asking me to do?" "John, I want you to help me give away my fortune. All of it. But not to charities or foundations. I want to give it to people who really need it, people who are struggling, people who have been forgotten by the world. And I want to do it before I die." The words hung in the air between them. Maya felt her breath catch in her throat. "How much are we talking about?" Harrison's eyes never left hers. $47 million. Maya's hands went numb. She looked around the cabin again, wondering if this was some kind of elaborate joke or hidden camera situation. But Harrison's expression was deadly serious, filled with hope and desperation in equal measure. "I don't understand. Why me? You don't know anything about me." "I know enough." Harrison's voice grew stronger, more determined. "I've been watching you since I boarded. The way you treat every passenger with the same kindness, whether they're in first class or economy. The way you remembered the elderly woman's name in row 12. The way you helped that nervous young man during takeoff. You see people, Maya. Really see them. That's rarer than you think." Maya felt overwhelmed, her practical mind warring with something deeper, something that recognized the sincerity in Harrison's voice. "This is crazy. I know it sounds insane, but I've spent months trying to figure out how to do this right. I don't trust lawyers or financial advisors anymore. They see dollar signs, not human beings. I need someone with a good heart, someone who understands what it means to serve others." His eyes pleaded with her. "I need someone like you." The call button from another seat chimed, breaking the moment. Maya glanced over, seeing a passenger holding up an empty coffee cup. She looked back at Harrison, who was still holding the envelope toward her. "I need to take care of other passengers," she said quietly. "Of course. But Maya, please think about what I've said. We land in 3 hours. That gives us time to talk more, to plan. I have documents, bank information, everything you'd need." His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "This is my last chance to do something meaningful with my life. Please don't let me die with all this money sitting in accounts, helping no one." Maya stood slowly, her legs feeling unsteady. She took the envelope with hands that trembled slightly. "I'll think about it. That's all I ask." As she walked away to attend to other passengers, Maya's mind spun with questions and possibilities. The envelope felt heavy in her pocket, heavier than paper should feel. Whatever was inside would change everything. She could sense that much. But she had no idea that Harrison Blackwell's final wish would transform not just her life, but the lives of dozens of strangers in ways she could never imagine. The plane continued its steady flight toward New York, carrying Maya toward a decision that would test everything she thought she knew about trust, compassion, and the power of human connection. Maya spent the next hour moving through the cabin like she was in a dream. She served drinks, collected meal trays, and answered passenger questions. But her mind kept returning to the envelope tucked safely in her uniform pocket. Every time she passed Harrison's seat, she could feel his eyes on her, patient but hopeful. During a brief break in the galley, Maya pulled out the envelope with trembling fingers. Her colleague Jennifer was busy preparing snacks for the next service, giving Maya a moment of privacy. She opened the heavy paper carefully and found several documents inside. Bank statements showing account balances that made her dizzy, legal papers with official seals, and a handwritten letter on expensive stationery. The letter was addressed to her, though he'd written it before they'd even met. "To the person who will help me find redemption," it began. Maya's heart raced as she read his words. Harrison had detailed his entire plan, his reasons, and his desperate hope that someone with a pure heart would help him make amends for a lifetime of focusing only on profit. He wrote about growing up poor, about clawing his way to success, about the relationships he'd sacrificed and the people he'd stepped on to build his empire. He wrote about losing his wife to cancer 5 years ago, about having no children, about realizing too late that money couldn't buy the things that actually mattered. His handwriting grew shakier toward the end of the letter, as he described his diagnosis, his regrets, and his final wish to use his wealth to help strangers who needed hope. Maya folded the letter carefully and slipped it back into the envelope. Her hands were shaking as she returned to the cabin. This wasn't just about money. This was about a man facing death who wanted to leave something good behind, something that would matter. She approached Harrison's seat during a quiet moment, when most passengers were sleeping or watching movies. He looked up at her with eyes full of anxiety and hope. "I read your letter," she said quietly, settling into the empty seat beside him. "And?" Maya took a deep breath. "Tell me exactly what you want me to do." Harrison's face lit up with relief and gratitude. He reached for a briefcase under his seat and pulled out more documents. "I've identified 12 people," he said, keeping his voice low. "Families struggling with medical bills, single mothers working 3 jobs, students who can't afford college, people who've been dealt hard hands by life but who keep fighting." He showed her photographs, stories he'd collected through private investigators and research. A factory worker in Detroit whose daughter needed surgery they couldn't afford. A teacher in rural Mississippi who spent her own money on supplies for her students. An elderly veteran who was about to lose his home. Each story broke Maya's heart a little more. "How do you know about these people?" Maya asked. I hired investigators, but not for the reasons you might think. I wanted to find people who were truly deserving, people who would use help to build better lives rather than waste it, people who had never asked for handouts but who deserved a miracle. Harrison pulled out a final document, a power of attorney form. "If you agree to help me, I'll transfer legal authority over my assets to you. You'll have complete control over how the money is distributed. I trust your judgment more than my own." Maya stared at the papers. "Harrison, I'm a flight attendant. I don't know anything about managing millions of dollars. You know about people. That's what matters most." His eyes were intense, pleading. "I have lawyers and accountants who can handle the technical details, but the decisions about who gets what, how much, when to help, those need to come from someone with a heart like yours." The plane hit a patch of turbulence, reminding Maya they were still thousands of feet above the ground. suspended between Harrison's old life and whatever came next. She looked at the photos of the families again, imagining their faces when they received unexpected help, imagining children getting the medical care they needed, students getting to pursue their dreams, parents finally able to breathe. "What happens after you're gone?" she asked softly. "There's a foundation I've set up. You would become the director, with a salary that would allow you to quit this job if you wanted. But more importantly, you'd be responsible for continuing this work, finding people who need help, making sure the money goes to the right places." Maya felt tears pricking her eyes. "Why are you so sure about me? What if I'm not the person you think I am?" Harrison smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. "Because in the 3 hours I've known you, you've shown more compassion than most people show in a lifetime. Because you're asking the right questions. Because you're worried about doing it wrong, which tells me you'd do it right." The captain's voice came over the intercom, announcing their descent into New York. Maya realized they only had about an hour left together, an hour to make a decision that would change everything. "I need to think about this," she said finally. "Of course. But Maya, please understand that time is not on our side. The doctors were very clear about my prognosis. Every day we wait is a day these families continue to struggle." Maya nodded and returned to her duties, but her mind was spinning. She thought about her own life, her modest salary, her small apartment, her routine existence. She thought about the power to change lives, to be the miracle that people prayed for but never expected to receive. As the plane began its descent, Harrison pressed the call button one more time. Maya approached, already knowing what he was going to ask. "Have you decided?" Maya looked around the cabin at all the passengers, each with their own stories, their own struggles, their own dreams. She thought about the 12 families in Harrison's files, waiting for help they didn't even know was coming. She thought about a dying man's desperate wish to matter, to leave something good behind. "Yes," she said quietly, "I'll help you." Harrison's eyes filled with tears. He reached for her hand and squeezed it gently. "Thank you. You have no idea what this means to me." "What happens now?" Harrison pulled out his phone. "Now I make some calls. My lawyers are waiting. We can have the papers ready by the time we land. If you're truly committed to this, we can start today." Maya felt a mixture of terror and excitement coursing through her veins. "Harrison, what if I mess this up? What if I make the wrong choices?" "Impossible," he said with certainty, "because your heart is in the right place. That's all that matters." As the plane touched down at JFK, Maya realized her life as she knew it was over. Whatever came next would be completely different, completely unknown, but filled with the possibility of making a real difference in the world. She had no idea that within 24 hours, she would be standing in a law office, signing documents that would make her responsible for $47 million. She had no idea that her first act would involve a phone call to Detroit that would save a little girl's life. And she had no idea that Harrison Blackwell would spend his final weeks watching with joy as Maya became exactly the person he'd hoped she would be. The plane rolled to a stop at the gate, but for Maya and Harrison, their journey together was just beginning. The next morning, Maya found herself sitting in a glass-walled conference room on the 40th floor of a Manhattan skyscraper. Harrison sat beside her, looking even more frail in the harsh fluorescent lighting, but his eyes burned with determination. Across from them sat 3 lawyers in expensive suits, their briefcases open, documents spread across the mahogany table like battle plans. "Miss Rodriguez, I need to make sure you understand the magnitude of what you're agreeing to," said the lead attorney, a sharp-faced woman named Catherine Mills. "This isn't just about writing checks. You'll be legally responsible for the distribution of $47 million. There are tax implications, legal requirements, documentation procedures." Maya's hands felt clammy as she gripped the leather chair. "I understand it's a big responsibility." Harrison leaned forward, his voice stronger than it had been on the plane. "Catherine, we've been through this. Maya will have full support from your firm. She's not doing this alone. Mr. Blackwell, with all due respect, Miss Rodriguez is a flight attendant. She has no experience with financial management, no background in charitable giving, no understanding of the legal complexities involved. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. The lawyer's tone was dismissive, condescending. She thought about the passengers she'd served for 3 years, the way she'd learned to read people, to understand what they needed before they asked. She thought about Harrison's letter, his desperate hope for someone who cared more about people than procedures. "You're right," Maya said quietly, her voice gaining strength as she continued. "I don't know anything about tax codes or legal documents, but I know people. I know what it looks like when someone is struggling. I know the difference between someone who needs help and someone who just wants a handout." Catherine's expression softened slightly, but her concern remained. "Miss Rodriguez, good intentions aren't enough when you're dealing with this amount of money. One mistake could result in lawsuits, tax penalties, investigations." Harrison's hand found Maya's across the table. His skin was paper-thin, cold, but his grip was steady. "Catherine, that's why I'm paying your firm a substantial retainer. Maya makes the heart decisions. You handle the legal ones." For the next 2 hours, they went through document after document. Power of attorney forms, foundation bylaws, distribution guidelines. Maya's head spun with terms like fiduciary responsibility and charitable remainder trusts. But every time she felt overwhelmed, she thought about the photographs Harrison had shown her. The little girl who needed surgery, the veteran facing foreclosure, the teacher buying supplies with her grocery money. Finally, Catherine slid a thick stack of papers toward Maya. "These are the final documents. Once you sign, you'll have complete authority over Mr. Blackwell's assets. Are you absolutely certain about this?" Maya looked at Harrison. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow. The meeting had exhausted him, but when he opened his eyes and looked at her, she saw peace there, trust, hope. "I'm certain," Maya said, and signed her name with hands that no longer trembled. That afternoon, they visited the first family on Harrison's list. The Rodriguez family, no relation to Maya despite sharing her last name, lived in a cramped apartment in Queens. Maria Rodriguez worked double shifts at a diner while caring for her 8-year-old daughter Sophia, who needed a heart operation they couldn't afford. Maya knocked on the door with Harrison beside her, both of them nervous in different ways. When Maria answered, her tired eyes went from confusion to wariness. She'd learned to be suspicious of strangers bearing promises. "Mrs. Rodriguez, my name is Maya. This is Harrison. We'd like to talk to you about Sophia's medical situation." Maria's hand tightened on the door handle. "If you're from the hospital billing department, I told them I'm making payments. I just need more time." "We're not from the hospital," Maya said gently. "We're here because we want to help." What happened next would stay with Maya forever. They sat in the small living room, Sophia coloring quietly at a worn kitchen table while her mother listened with growing disbelief as Harrison explained why they were there. When Maya handed Maria a certified check for $200,000, enough to cover Sophia's surgery and years of follow-up care, the woman simply stared at the paper. "This isn't real," Maria whispered. "It's real," Harrison said softly. "Sophia is going to get the surgery she needs. You're going to be able to take time off work to be with her, and you'll never have to worry about medical bills again." Maria broke down then, sobbing into her hands, while Sophia looked up from her coloring book with wide, curious eyes. Maya knelt beside the little girl, who had the same dark eyes she saw in the mirror every morning. "Are you an angel?" Sophia asked innocently. Maya smiled through her own tears. "No, sweetheart. I'm just someone who wants to help." They visited 3 more families that day. Each stop broke Maya's heart a little more and rebuilt it stronger. The elderly veteran who'd served 2 tours in Vietnam and now faced losing his home to back taxes. The single mother of twins who worked 3 jobs but still couldn't afford to fix her car, which meant she might lose all 3 jobs. The college student who was one semester away from becoming a teacher but had run out of money for tuition. By evening, they'd given away over $500,000. Harrison was exhausted, moving slowly, but his face glowed with something Maya had never seen before. Joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy. How do you feel?" he asked as their taxi crawled through Manhattan traffic. Overwhelmed. Scared. Amazing. Maya shook her head, still processing what they'd done. "Harrison, we changed those people's lives today. Completely changed them. We did." His voice was barely audible over the city noise. "For the first time in my life, I feel like my money did something that mattered." That night, Maya sat in her hotel room staring at the foundation documents. Tomorrow, Harrison would return to Los Angeles for his final treatments. She would fly back to her life, except her life wasn't the same anymore. She'd submitted her resignation to Continental Airways that afternoon. Starting Monday, she would be the full-time director of the Blackwell Foundation, responsible for giving away millions of dollars to people who needed miracles. Her phone rang. Harrison's name appeared on the screen. "I can't sleep," he said when she answered. "I keep thinking about Sophia's face when you knelt down to talk to her, about Maria's tears, about that veteran's handshake." "I can't sleep either," Maya admitted. "I keep wondering if I'm dreaming." "Maya, I need you to promise me something." "What?" Promise me you'll remember this feeling, this joy, this sense of purpose. There will be days when the paperwork feels overwhelming, when lawyers frustrate you, when people question your decisions. Promise me you'll remember why we're doing this." Maya looked out her hotel window at the city lights, thinking about all the people out there struggling, hoping, praying for help that might never come. "I promise." "Good, because tomorrow I'm going to give you addresses for 8 more families, and next week there will be 8 more after that. We have a lot of work to do." 3 weeks later, Maya stood in a hospital room in Los Angeles, holding Harrison's hand as monitors beeped softly around them. He'd insisted on staying conscious, refusing the heavy pain medications that would have made him more comfortable but less aware. "Tell me about the teacher," he whispered. Maya smiled, even through her tears. "Jennifer?" She cried for 10 minutes when we told her the foundation would pay off her student loans and give her classroom a $50,000 budget for supplies. She said she'd dreamed of having enough books for every student. "And the factory worker's daughter?" "See, Sophia had her surgery yesterday. It went perfectly. She's going to be fine, Harrison. She's going to live a full, normal life." Harrison's grip on her hand tightened slightly. 12 families so far? 15. I found 3 more that needed help." "Good. Trust your instincts." His breathing was getting shallower. "Maya, I'm here. Thank you. For everything. For seeing what I couldn't see. For caring about people I'll never meet. For giving my life meaning at the very end." Maya squeezed his hand. "Thank you for trusting me. For showing me what's possible when we choose to help instead of just hoping someone else will." Harrison Blackwell died at 3:17 a.m. on a Thursday morning, with Maya holding his hand and nurses who'd grown to love his gentle spirit, saying quiet prayers around his bed. His last words were, "Take care of them." The funeral was small, attended mostly by hospital staff and the lawyers who'd helped with the foundation. But at the back of the chapel, Maya noticed several people she didn't recognize. When she approached them afterward, she realized who they were. Maria Rodriguez stood with Sophia, who wore a new dress and had color in her cheeks for the first time since Maya had met her. The elderly veteran stood straight and proud in his old military uniform. The single mother held hands with her twins, all of them wearing their Sunday best. "We wanted to say goodbye," Maria said simply. "And thank you." Sophia tugged on Maya's dress. "Is the nice man really gone?" Maya knelt down to the little girl's level, just like she had that first day. "His body is gone, sweetheart. But the good things he did, the way he helped people, that lives on forever. Like magic?" "Exactly like magic." 6 months later, the Blackwell Foundation had helped 43 families. Maya had quit her hotel room and found a small apartment near the foundation offices. Her days were spent reviewing applications, visiting families, and working with lawyers to ensure every dollar went where it could do the most good. She'd learned to navigate board meetings and tax forms, to spot genuine need among the dozens of requests that came in daily, to balance her heart with her head when making decisions about who to help. It wasn't always easy, but every night she fell asleep knowing that somewhere, a family was sleeping better because of Harrison's final wish. The story of the millionaire and the flight attendant had spread, though Maya tried to keep publicity to a minimum. Reporters called regularly, wanting to interview the woman who'd given up her career to give away millions. But Maya always declined. This wasn't about her. It was about the people who needed help and the man who'd trusted her to provide it. On the anniversary of Harrison's death, Maya visited his grave with a folder full of thank you letters. Letters from Sophia, now healthy and thriving in school. From the veteran, who'd started a support group for homeless vets. From the college student, now teaching kindergarten in an inner-city school. From dozens of families whose lives had been transformed by one man's final act of redemption. She sat by his headstone and read each letter aloud, tears streaming down her face as she shared the stories of hope and healing that had grown from his gift. "We did it, Harrison," she whispered when she'd finished reading. "We really did it. Your money didn't just help people survive. It helped them thrive. It gave them hope when they had none left. It showed them that someone, somewhere, cared about their struggles." A gentle breeze stirred the flowers she'd placed on his grave, and for a moment, Maya could almost hear his voice again, soft and grateful, saying what he'd said that last night in the hospital. Take care of them, and she would. For as long as there were people who needed help and hope, Maya would be there, carrying forward the legacy of a man who'd learned that the true measure of wealth isn't what you accumulate, but what you give away. The Blackwell Foundation would go on to help thousands of families over the years, but it all started with one conversation at 30,000 feet between a dying millionaire and a flight attendant who chose to say yes when asked to do something extraordinary. Sometimes the most extraordinary moments happen in the most ordinary places. Maya's story reminds us that compassion doesn't require wealth or power, just a willingness to see people who need hope. Harrison found his redemption not in boardrooms or banks, but in the heart of someone who chose kindness over caution. Their legacy continues to change lives, one family at a time, proving that true wealth is measured by the lives we touch. What would you do if given the chance to change someone's world? Let me know in the comments below.